Okay, so on veganism, we've covered a lot. Are there any topics you can think of that you'd like to add to what we've gone over so far?
Yeah, I've got a pet peeve that I'd like to talk about.
Cool.
Whenever, a lot of times when I tell people I'm vegan or they ask because they've heard, they say, "Oh man, that's so cool, I could never do that." I just don't have the willpower to do that, but I really admire your choice. Oh man, that just really annoys me, because willpower is a choice, and if it was really important to you, I believe that anyone out there could do this. It's really not that hard as long as you have a good reason to do it. And I don't know, maybe I'm speaking from a position of privilege because I grew up cooking and I had a decent education about nutrition, but I think that, especially with the internet now, anyone can go out there and find the information they need to make this diet work for them. And as far as expense goes, people often ask, "Oh, well, that must be so expensive." And it can be if you're constantly buying pre-prepared meals from, Whole Foods or something. But if you're buying smart, just like if you're buying smart on any diet, then it doesn't have to be that expensive.
Yeah.
Unless you're a huge eater like me.
Well, and you could say too, I mean, the amount you're going to save in healthcare expenses will make up for any increasing costs. And I think many would argue that they actually spend less on at least a cooked vegan diet. I think you can do pretty damn cheaply. And I think even those that are doing a fully raw diet have found ways to do that pretty cheaply as well. So.
Yeah. The 50-pound bag of rice doesn't actually cost that much.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. I guess let's get into. Yeah. There's one other question I'd like to ask you. If someone was to take up this lifestyle, let's say they've just decided to do it, are there any general tips that you would offer them to kind of help them get through that transitional period?
Yeah, I would say don't think of it as, "Oh, I can't do this, I can't eat that, I can't go here, I can't do this. I miss this so much, I miss cheese so much." Think of it more as, "Oh my gosh, there are so many new foods I have to try. I'm excited about this. There's so many restaurants that I can go to now and order a vegan meal and try out all these different ways of cooking and thinking about food." Just get excited about it. Find a way to be excited about this change. And you should also be excited about what health effects you'll see, if you'll grow in athletic performance or if you'll lose weight, whatever your goals are. And also be excited about connecting in a more genuine fashion with the world and with other creatures in a way that is not hypocritical. Because a lot of people, I always viewed myself as a kind person, but really looking back, using my money to support a system of cruelty and suffering and persecution of other creatures was not a very kind thing for me to do. So I feel like I'm living more in harmony with my principles and my spirit. And that's a pretty exciting thing. So get excited if you're about to make this change. It's really cool.
That's beautiful. All right, let's transition into the work that you're doing. So tell us what got you into this, and I guess lay out the basic principles behind it. It's an interesting time because porn has become kind of just very prevalent throughout the whole culture. I mean, it's almost coming. You're almost seeing it get into like mainstream media as articles and stuff. So, what got you into this? And tell us your general position on it.
Well, I was of the first generation of people to grow up with internet, and internet porn goes along with the internet. It's intricately tied. You can't extricate the two. And I started using internet porn at age 9. Just because I sought it out, no one showed it to me. I just always had a high sex drive as a child, and I wondered, I could probably find nude pictures of women on the internet, so that's what I did. And from that first search, I was hooked. I was just a little kid who liked women, and looking at naked women was awesome. And unfortunately, I went deeper and deeper into that, and over time, and everyone who's interested in this topic should watch Gary Wilson's TED Talk, The Great Porn Experiment, because when I watched it over a year ago now, gave me a deeper understanding of myself and my own porn habits. And I realized that over years of using porn, I had desensitized my sexual response system. Like, at first, just a nude photo would be more than enough to send me over the top, you know. And over time, I progressed into videos and then various kinks that I found exciting to me.
Right.
And into darker and darker stuff within pornography. And when I actually had a chance to have sex for the first time as a teenager, I couldn't get it up. And I didn't understand for 6 years after that, after many failures to have sex with various women, that it was because I had porn-induced erectile dysfunction.
Wow. Never heard of it. Wow.
Yeah, right? Neither had I. And when I looked for answers back when I was a teenager, and this was first happening to me, all I could find was that, oh, it must be performance anxiety. I was too much in my head or nervous about the opportunity, and that was getting in the way of my sexual arousal. And it wasn't until I finally faced this problem again 6 years after that, that I searched out and I found that a lot of other men were having the same problem. And they had realized that what connected them all was years of pornography use and internet porn use in particular. And I learned about all this neuroscience and brain science that explained how and why this happened. And there's a lot of information there, so I won't go into it now. But for anyone who's interested, go to my channel, and I'm sure we'll post a link to it on this video. And yeah. I have a lot of videos on this topic there. The one you should see if you're going to watch one of them is called A Story of Porn Addiction and Recovery. I, about 4 or 5 months ago now, spoke about this publicly to about 300 people here in Portland. And wow. I told my whole story from childhood to recovery.
And what's the name of your channel, Noah?
It's called Bvrning Qvestions. But
okay.
instead of U's, there are V's because somebody already took Bvrning Qvestions with U's. So it's Bvrning Qvestions. Spelled phonetically.
All right.
Yeah.
So what was that like, telling this very personal story to 300 people, man?
Yeah. Well, for most of my life, I would never have talked about this to anybody. I was very ashamed of the fact that I had a penis that didn't work. And it made me feel like less of a man for sure. But this whole process of recovery, part of that, a huge part of that, was becoming open and honest about who I am and my own sexuality and everything in my life. And I started to live my life in an open way, telling my loved ones everything about me. And that freed me from a prison I had built for myself. And as I grew more comfortable talking about it with people, and I wrote a book about this because I wanted to share this information with people, because when I was 18, I could have used the book that I ended up writing. Very much I could have used that book. So I wanted other people to have this information before they suffered through this for 6 years. So I did that, and I just started reaching out to people and giving people advice. And then a friend of mine, Gary Wilson, who gave that TED Talk, connected me with the producer of this show called the Mystery Box Show here in Portland. It's a storytelling event where people tell stories about sex and sexuality. And that's how I got hooked up with that event. And this whole journey has been one of the best things I've ever done in my life.
It's very interesting. So I would guess that you've given up porn. You don't use porn anymore. And have you noticed a corresponding effect in your sexual performance?
Yes and yes. Yeah, I don't use porn anymore, and I don't masturbate anymore either. I started that journey to cure myself of porn-induced erectile dysfunction, and I did. But what shocked me was how many other effects I noticed from quitting porn, and how many effects I'd realized using porn for so long had on me. And that system that is desensitized, the dopamine system in the brain, it affects far more than just sexual arousal. It affects motivation, and social anxiety is a common symptom among porn users. And I noticed that the farther along I went on this journey, the more I was able to go out into the world without any fear and connect with people in a much more fluid way. And I was much more motivated. I mean, I wrote and published a book in 5 months, and I started a business, and I did all these things that I had always wanted to do but never did because I was using porn and masturbating.
Yeah, just on a level of time. I hear you.
But as far as sex goes, before, when I was using porn, sex was like totally not even pleasurable for me. I think couldn't hardly feel anything. And now, I mean, it's just a transcendent experience. And I know it's not just in my head, because the physical sensations are completely different than they were when I was using porn.
Very interesting. Very interesting. You know, you're reminding me of a movie. Did you see this movie? I think it's called, is it Ron John? Have you seen that?
Don John, yeah.
Don John. Yeah, I really liked that. I thought that was it was great. I mean, it's kind of like he grew out of using porn, you know. And it's interesting. Was you being 9 years old and having access, do you recommend to parents now that they get a real firm handle on what their kids are doing on the internet?
Well, yes, and I also recommend that parents educate themselves as to what's out there and get comfortable talking about sex and porn, first with each other and then with their friends and then with their children. Because, like, I never really had a real sex talk growing up, but I don't believe there should just be one sex talk. I believe that there should be a dynamic between parents and children that is comfortable talking about sex. So when a child has a question or is concerned about something, they feel comfortable going to their parents and getting answers rather than finding answers in porn or from their friends who know very little.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. There was something I wanted to ask you. Do you think that porn has at all been a liberating force for the society in terms of making sex more accessible? Obviously, there's a lot of negative consequences of porn. Do you see there as having ever been anything positive from it, or do you think it's just a train wreck? And
the negative consequences in my own life have been so profound that it's hard for me to see the positive, but I do believe that there are positive effects. I think there are people who probably use porn in a healthful fashion, and I think that porn has probably had somewhat of a liberating effect, at least showing people what's possible with sex. But whenever anyone seeks fulfillment in porn rather than in real relationships, that's where the problem starts. And often it starts in just when addiction really takes a hold, I find, is when people start using whatever they're using, drugs or porn or alcohol or gambling, when they start using that thing in order to avoid bad feelings. Like they feel lonely, so they turn to porn, say, or they feel unworthy, or they feel pressured by their lives, and they turn to porn to make themselves feel better in the moment. But really, they're just running away from facing those feelings. And that's when you can really get into that addictive cycle that is very unhealthy.
And what coincides with that is a release of endorphins, right? Which or which whatever the chemicals are in the body. So it is essentially a drug. It's like an internally released drug every time you have an orgasm, right?
I mean, drugs have an effect on our state of mind because they activate certain built-in mechanisms within our brain. And things like sex or porn activate those same mechanisms just in a natural way. So we see the same physical brain changes in behavioral addicts that we see in drug addicts. It is a real rewiring of the brain to seek the addictive substance rather than to seek healthy, fulfilling action in the real world.
And does that tie in with why you've not only given up porn, but you've also, I think you said you've given up masturbation. So do you kind of think they're linked in that way, or are they distinct at all? Or what's the reasoning?
For me, they'll always be linked because since I was 9 years old, porn and masturbation were basically one and the same.
Yeah.
And to masturbate again would be to open up the door to finding sexual pleasure by myself. And that opens up the door to porn again.
Gotcha.
And for me, that's just not an option. I think that, a guy who masturbates occasionally once a week or once every 2 weeks to fantasy and just does it because he feels like it in the moment, I don't think that's really an unhealthy thing to do. But for me also, when I'm not masturbating, transmutation of sexual energy is never something I put much stock in until I stopped masturbating and realized how powerful it was. So rather than I would say, wasting that energy just having sex with myself, basically. I'd rather go out and take action and pursue my dreams and my goals. And then it's all the more special when I'm with someone, a woman I have a connection with, because the only time I explore my sexuality and get that sexual release is with a partner.
Beautifully stated. It sounds like, I like this notion you raised of transmuting sexual energy, and it seems like primarily you're talking about just having physical energy to interact with the world. There's not necessarily a spiritual component to this, although there may be. You're just saying physical energy to do activities, right?
I mean, I'm not going to say it's just calories. I think it's more than that. I think of it in a spiritual way, but also in a neurochemical way, because I mean the way we're wired evolutionarily is sex is one of our greatest goals as evolutionary beings. We want to pass on our genes, and once we satisfy that goal by having an orgasm, then the neurochemicals in our brain are released to give us the cue that it's time to relax. We did our job evolutionarily. We impregnated a woman, even if it was just tissues. Our body doesn't know the difference necessarily. And we get the cue that, okay, we can relax now. We had sex. But if you're not doing that, then our drive is, okay, we got to go get better. We got to make ourselves the best we can so we can find the best mate we can and achieve that evolutionary goal. And for me, if I'm just lying around doing nothing, my thoughts will turn to sex. I'm just a man. But, and if I just keep sitting there, then I'll be leading myself down a path that I know where that goes. I don't want to go down that path, so I jump up and I do something. And that's transmuting of sexual energy for me. All right,
all right. What would you say about this regarding, say, a teenage boy? Would you say that it's natural at a certain age when these hormones are perhaps at their height, that, or even, let's say, before a boy has any intimate relations with another partner, do you think it's normal that they go through a period of masturbation, or do you think that children should be discouraged from that kind of thing, or what's your...
I don't think masturbation in itself should be discouraged. I think it is a natural activity. I masturbated since before I can remember, probably 1 or 2, and so it wasn't like I was influenced by porn to start masturbating. Some guys never masturbated before seeing porn. It just really depends on the individual. But I think masturbation is a way for us to explore sexuality and get comfortable with, a little bit comfortable with it ourselves before exploring it with other people. And the problem is with porn, there's this infinite variety, infinite well of sexual stimulation that we can dive into, and it never gets old. There's always something new, something more novel to explore. Whereas if you're just masturbating to fantasy, eventually you get bored. You're like, okay, time to find a real woman. So I think masturbation without any of these aids, like pornography, is something that we naturally sort of grow out of. Maybe not that we ever leave behind entirely, but that we do grow out of and see as less important or less fulfilling of an activity after our adolescent years. But with porn, that mechanism is foibled, and people are just caught up in it.
Okay. And have you noticed through the groups that you've been interacting with, is this a problem for women as well as men, or is it primarily men?
I'd say it's primarily men, but by all means, there are women who suffer with the same addiction to pornography. And for the women who are addicted, it can actually be worse, because with men, we have a longer set refractory period after orgasm. We tend not to be sexually excited anymore for a while. It takes a while to recoup and regenerate that drive. But women have a much, much shorter refractory period, and they can have 20 orgasms or more in a day. So they can devote a lot more time to this and get a lot deeper into it than even the most addicted men can.
Interesting, interesting. All right. Since we're kind of on this sexuality topic, I've thought of a question I probably should have asked you in the first part. Did you notice when you became vegan any enhancement in terms of sexual performance?
I mean, at the time, I still had zero sexual performance because I had porn-induced erectile dysfunction, so I'd have to say no.
Okay. Okay. Right. All right. All right. All right, man. Well, fascinating. Fascinating. So let's see. There's a couple things you're involved in. You run your own channel where you post videos regarding the porn topic. You're also involved with Mercy for Animals.
Mm-hmm.
And any other fields that you're interested in?
I mean, as far as jobs, I have too many to talk about, but as far as dreams and causes, I'd say veganism and porn addiction recovery are my two largest. And I also have a website called addictedtointernetporn.com. For anyone who wants to check that out, you can read all my posts about porn addiction, and I have a huge list of outside resources. People can learn all about it. And also, my book is on there if you'd like to purchase it. Shameless plug.
And the title of your book again, Noah?
It's Whack, Addicted to Internet Porn.
I like it. Good title, yeah. And the name of the guy who did the TED Talk you recommend is, what's the name again?
Gary Wilson.
Okay. And since we're on references, are there some books or leaders or videos that you think are excellent resources for vegans that helped you a lot in your path to veganism? Anybody you'd recommend?
Well, when I started going down the vegan path, I never really read any books about it. I was just using the internet, seeing what people were saying on forums and reading articles, that sort of thing, and reading scholastic research. But since I've been a vegan, one of my heroes is Michael Greger. We already talked about him a little bit.
Yeah.
He runs nutritionfacts.org, and he does a lot of great videos. His year in review videos that he does once per year are excellent. One of them was he went through like the top 25 causes of death in the United States and related most every one to veganism and how they could be drastically reduced by a plant-based diet. Very compelling stuff. The other ones that weren't, I think, were accidents and maybe a couple of others.
You know, that's the thing, man. It's just mind-boggling. It's like such a no-brainer, you know?
Yeah, and what really disappointed me is that I felt so inspired by this video and so moved by it that I sent it by email to a lot of my closest friends and family saying, please watch this, and hardly anyone did.
Dude, I hear you, man. I hear you. It's an uphill battle.
Yeah, it really is. But I mean, if I could wake up and you could wake up, then other people can wake up, and one day it'll be like Star Trek. No one will eat any animal products.
That's right. That's right. Shoot, there was something else I wanted to ask you about. Is there anything before we close this up that you'd like to add here?
Well, I did a video recently about the 3 best decisions I ever made in my life. 1 was going vegan. 2 was recovering from porn addiction and stopping using porn and masturbating. And the 3rd was ceasing to care about expectations for me. My family's expectations, my society's expectations, that sort of thing. And just choosing to follow my heart and do exactly what I wanted to do and what I thought was best. And listening to other people, considering their opinions, but if they didn't jive with what I believed was right, then forging ahead regardless. So I just recommend to people, do your own research, do your own thinking, and make your own decisions, because no one else has to live with the consequences but you.
Beautiful. Beautiful note to close it on. Thank you, Noah. Thank you for taking the time, man.
Thank you for interviewing. This was really fun.
It was a real pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Paul, signing off.
Yeah, I will. I'll probably get this posted in a day or two, and if you ever want me to change anything or remove it, just let me know.
Okay.
All right.
I don't foresee that happening.
Okay. All right.
All right.
See you, man.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.